The fan. You always need to be careful when you put yourself out there on the internet. From what you look like to your personal information. You should always take precautions on what you do and who you talk to while you're out strolling through the interwebs. But one group of people out there that no one talks about, but probably should, are YouTube horror narrators. Individuals who should take heed of how personal they get, and most do. But for those who don't, it could mean dangerous and severe consequences. If you stop and think about it, they should take every precaution they can, especially the ones who go live and interact with their subscribers through live streams. They should always ask themselves, how personal do I get? Do I reveal my face? Do I give my name? Do I say which city or state I reside in? What I do or did for a profession? And probably the most important question is, who is this subscriber I'm talking to? Can I trust them? What do they truly want? Do they have nefarious intentions? Well, here's a story of what happens when you don't ask those important questions. A story where a narrator was a little too fast and loose with their information and came across the wrong subscriber who looked upon them in a weird, unhealthy, local celebrity-like figure that became obsessed and took it to the extreme. This story centers around the disturbed individual, Jake Bowles, who took his fandom too far. It started back in 2020 when, like so many other people, he joined YouTube to find videos to watch that piqued his interests. Jake, or Jakey, as he would sometimes be called, found himself drawn to two types of channels: anything having to do with wrestling and the horror story community of narrators. He integrated himself in the horror community from channel to channel. He went enjoying the stories, getting lost in the narrators' tales of woe. But something was missing. The stories were great, but the narrators just weren't doing it for them. He searched and he searched, feeling like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. This narrator's voice is too high. This narrator's voice is too low. Then he finally realized he didn't even like the female narrators in the horror community and narrowed it down to just the male narrators. After searching and searching, by mid-2020, he found a narrator's voice that was just right. And that channel was Shall We Recite? And the narrator's name was Joseph. From the first video Jake came across about true home invasion stories, he was hooked. Something about Joseph's docile, monotone voice intrigued Jake's brain. He couldn't put his finger on it, but it caused a stirring of emotions inside of him. He subscribed instantly and made himself known right away, popping up in that video's comment section telling Joseph that he found his channel and that he loved his voice and was instantly his biggest fan. From that day forward, Jake never missed a video upload and started going into the Shall We Recite live streams. At first, Jake was as normal as he could be, barely saying anything, then gradually making himself known more and more, being friendly to other members, trying to cozy up to the moderators, and after a month or so, he was well known by the members and mods that frequented the channel's live streams, even gaining the attention of Joseph himself. Not long after that, the normalcy faded, and another side of Jake appeared. Many, as a matter of fact. You see, he made himself known by donations during the live streams. Frequent, generous donations that became to the point of spamming on most nights. It almost got to the point where you would hear from Jake and his donation messages almost as much as Joseph reading the stories. During some live streams, he was an attention hog. Through these numerous donations, he painted himself as a sheriff's deputy with a pregnant wife and small son. His wife, whose name was Susanna, would also frequent the live streams as well, and also throw a donation out every once in a while. By each live stream, though, he became more outlandish, taking control of the made-up channel's fan club, calling himself the president of the Margarine Foot Club, started calling himself Joseph's best friend, even though he had never even met him, let alone talked to him in private. Started saying weird personal things about his wife and his donations, giving himself weird nicknames like the cerebral hemorrhage, acting like he was a professional wrestler with his weird nicknames, and saying only he can destroy the live stream's abundant sex bot problem. People started to become tired of his games, and some of the channel's regulars leaving the streams because of his nonsense, and others realizing his act was all bullshit and calling him out on it. It became abundantly clear that he and his supposed wife were in fact the same person. They were never in the streams together, and when he would rattle off some nonsense, a minute or two later, after he switched accounts, his wife would pop up supporting whatever weird comment he had just made. It wasn't hard for some people to figure out that his wife didn't exist, just by the way she would talk, regurgitating the same weird nicknames he called himself, and speaking almost exactly like he would. The only person who seemed not to notice was Joseph. Whether that was because he was naive or the donations he was receiving. But Jake was allowed to carry on in a disturbing fashion. He started to become clingy and even creepy to some other channel regulars. More and more members were noticing this, and a few did some detective work to try and expose Jake for the liar he was. A few members found a YouTube channel with his name, Jake Bowles, except he wasn't a sheriff's deputy. Hell, he wasn't even an adult. He wasn't married either. He lived with his grandmother and mother, who he would belittle in a few of the videos posted on his channel. He was not a grown man, just a disturbed teenager that lived with his grandmother and mother, who seemed to have an odd fascination with washing machines and dryers, and the backs of old porcelain toilets by the evidence of the few videos on his channel. It came to the realization that these donations he was spamming every stream came from either the grandmother or mother, and became a running joke by some members on the stream that after every donation, Jake had just stole one of their credit cards again. This information was passed to Joseph, but nothing was done about Jake. And Joseph began to slip up more and more, getting friendlier with Jake, telling the stream what state he lived in, details about the city and neighborhood he lived in. It was becoming reckless. Finally, after what everyone else had seen for a while, Joseph began to realize maybe Jake was becoming a little too attached. What made him realize this was when Jake said he and his fake wife were going to name their newborn baby girl after him and call her Josephine. Joseph tried to distance himself from him by ignoring some of the weird donation messages and tried to be a little less friendly and open with him, but it was too late. It had been almost 2 years since the information had come out about Jake. He was older now and could drive, and he wasn't appreciating the distance that Joseph was putting between them the past handful of streams. On one October night in 2022, During one of Joseph's live streams, a loud bang could be heard in the distance. Joseph said someone was knocking on his front door and excused himself for a moment to go answer it. After what was a few minutes, the members heard a commotion and an argument shortly after. They could hear Joseph scream, "What are you doing here? How did you find me? Please, no, no." Then 2 gunshots, followed by another younger voice scream, "After all the money I've given you, you owe me. You don't turn your back on your best friend and your #1 fan." Then silence. The members on the live stream were horrified. The police were called by some of the members on the stream and by Joseph's neighbors. When they arrived, they saw Jake sitting on the steps of the front door. He was staring up at them, smiling sinisterly. The information that came out was that Jake began to break down more and more mentally as Joseph began to distance himself from him. He felt that Joseph owed him for his loyalty and friendship and all the money he had donated throughout the years, which came out, by the way, that he was funded by his mother and grandmother, and after years of massive donations bankrupt the family, causing the mother to get a second job, and old Granny Bowles to dust off her G-string and return to the familiar pole at Slick Beaver's Gentlemen's Club. It came out that morning, before Jake shot Joseph, Jake got into an argument with his grandmother over the family's financials and her having to return to the greased-up pole after an absence of more than 20 years. That sent Jake into a mental rage, and he bludgeoned his grandmother to death with her dusty stiletto, then grabbed Grandpa Bowles' old revolver, jumped into the family minivan, and took off. As he drove around, he started to think of the cause of his problems and came to the conclusion that it was Joseph, and him being ungrateful and turning his back on him. So he remembered where Joseph said he lived, which was the neighboring state, and he remembered the city and neighborhood details and put it all together, then went straight to Joseph's house and did the unthinkable. So please take this advice and consider this cautionary tale and pay attention to what you tell your fans. I would like to give a heartfelt thank you to the special friends of the channel for your overwhelming generosity. If you would like to support the channel, the link is below in the description. Also, please send me your stories and poems to duchessofdarkness27@gmail.com. You can also find me on Instagram at duchess.ofdarkness and Twitter at duchessofdarkn2. I want to thank all my listeners for your kindness, your encouragement, and your support. It means the world to me. Thank you for joining me. Until next time.